Hi, my dear students. In this segment, I would like to do the poetry of Jack Davis's Aboriginal Australian. The poem Aboriginal Australia, written by Jack Davis. In the previous segment, we have already discussed about Jack Davis. Who is Jack Davis and how he was an Australian poet, then how an Australian poet was included inside of the post-colonial poetry. Then we have studied that well. What is the speciality? What is the historical characteristic of Australia and Canada in the post-colonial history? That we have already discussed. And we went through the short bio of Jack Davis, and we discussed that he was a social activist and he was a playwright rather than a poet. So he wrote so many poems, and it is also the part of his social activism, and he used the voice of poetry as a resistance and as a resilience to the brutal kind of colonization. And we know that we already concluded by saying that Jack Davis was born in 1917 and he was died and he passed away in 2000. And at the age of 83, he passed away, following a life devoted to improving a lot of Aboriginal Australian that we concluded in the previous segment. And we said that he was a public voice in Australian Aboriginal literature, and he was trying to explore the past and present of the new young people, especially the Aboriginal people. So in this segment, I am going to do a serious analysis, academical analysis of the poem itself, Aboriginal Australia. His poem, and as we said that he was a spokesperson of Aboriginal people, indigenous people and local people. We know already studied that in Australia, the local people was completely extincted. That means that the majority of the population now become the settlers. That the many number of tribes was wiped out from the coast of Australia. That is the issue of the poem itself. So he was discussing about the European influences upon Aboriginal life in specifically, as well as how the oppression, how the exploitation wiped the population, Aboriginal population of Australia. And the poetry is always in a depressed tone to display the hardship among the Aboriginals and among the people. And he was discussing about the violence and a sense of mutual disrespect. Colonization എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് തന്നെ വളരെ ബ്രൂട്ടലായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ചരിത്രപരമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു അനുഭവമാണ്, നമ്മൾ ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കൽ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ് ആണ് നമ്മൾ പറയേണ്ടത്. Whenever we hear the term colonization, the synonym comes to our mind what? Exploitation. A kind of war. It is a kind of violence. And epistemological invasion, cultural transformation. There are so many things comes to our mind. So in this poem, as he was a social activist, in this poem he was discussing about, inside of the poetry we will come across a number of historical references in the poetry. To say one thing, ഒരു കാര്യം പറയാൻ വേണ്ടി മാത്രമാണ് അദ്ദേഹം ചരിത്രം, ഈ ഒരുപാട് അവരനുഭവിച്ചിരുന്നിട്ടുള്ള ഒരുപാട് ബ്രൂട്ടലായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരുപാട് ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കൽ എക്സ്പീരിയൻസ്, ഹിസ്റ്റോറിക്കൽ ഇൻസിഡൻസിനെ റെഫർ ചെയ്തിട്ടാണ് ഈ പോയം എഴുതിയിട്ടുള്ളത്. Only to say one thing is only that he was trying to say that the American story, ഇന്ന് അവർ പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന ആധുനികതയുടെയും അവർ നേടിയിരിക്കുന്ന നേട്ടത്തിൻ്റെയും വികസനത്തിൻ്റെയും പറയുന്ന ഓസ്ട്രേലിയ നമുക്ക് കാണിച്ചു തരുന്ന, ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് എ റോസ് ടിൻഡഡ് വ്യൂ that we are looking at Australia, Sydney, Perth തുടങ്ങിയ നഗരങ്ങളൊക്കെ കേൾക്കുന്ന സമയത്ത്. ബട്ട് ഇവരുള്ള ആധുനിക ചരിത്രത്തിൻ്റെ കഥകൾ നമ്മൾ കേൾക്കുമ്പോൾ the poet is trying to say it is a lie, ഒരു വലിയ നുണയാണ്. And he was trying to say that, trying to reveal the bloody foundation that modern Australia built upon. That is very important theme in the poem. Bloody foundation that modern Australia built upon. That means that a number of massacres, the number of Aboriginal tribe was completely wiped out. from the coast of Australia. Then the settlers settled there, they acquired their land, and everything they polluted and exploited, even though the many generations are completely faded away into the darkness, the dark spots of the history. So, in short, we can say that the poem is itself discussing, the Jack Davis is trying to discuss about the sorrowful past and their resistance and their resilience against the colonization. And he was trying to say, at last he concluded his poetry, saying that we will discuss the poetry very soon, that he concluded that the modern Australia is a completely a lie. There is a bloody foundation. That means that they founded their territory, they founded their empire upon a foundation with a lot of blood, the blood of Aborginals. And അപ്പോൾ ഇങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു 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 കവിതയാണ് അബോർജിനൽസ്, ഓസ്ട്രേലിയൻ അബോർജിനൽസ് എന്ന് പറയുന്ന കവിത. ഓക്കെ, നമുക്കിനി നേരെ പോയം വായിച്ച് അതിലെന്താണുള്ളത് എന്ന് നോക്കാം. ഓക്കെ, വി ക്യാൻ ഗോ ടു ദ പോയട്രി, ദെൻ വി വിൽ come across the lines, and from the lines and between the lines we can hear the post-colonial themes and references, and how he used the words, and how he used the medium of poetry as a resistance to display the hardship of the Aboriginal life. Okay, we can go to the poetry. Firstly, the first line, that is Aboriginal Australia, written by Jack Davis. To the others, you once smiled a friendly smile. That means that to the others, other എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്, it is a concept we know, we have already studied. The otherness എന്ന് പറയുന്നതൊക്കെ പോസ്റ്റ് കൊളോണിയലുമായി ബന്ധപ്പെട്ട വന്ന തിയറിയാണ്. അതിന് to the others, അതായത് അവിടെ ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന ആളുകളോട്. You once smiled a friendly smile, said we were kin to one another. Thus with guile for a short while became to me a brother. അപ്പോൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ് how the European settlers came there, എങ്ങനെ how they started to settle there. And we know that in our India, they came here the first quarter of the especially the British East India Company, first quarter of the 18th century, they came here, and the Mughal Empire in Bengal allowed to do business here without tax. അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ കയറി കച്ചവടത്തിനായിട്ട് വന്ന ബ്രിട്ടീഷ് പീപ്പിൾ എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഇന്ത്യ പിടിച്ചടക്കിയത് എന്നുള്ള ചരിത്രം നമുക്കറിയാം. അതുപോലെ അമേരിക്കയിൽ എത്തിയതിനു ശേഷം സെഡ് വി വെർ കിൻ ടു വൺ അനദർ, ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് എ കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് എ കണ്ണിങ് ദാറ്റ് ഒരു സഹോദരനെ പോലെയാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഇൻഡിജിനിയസ് പീപ്പിൾ അവരെ റിസീവ് ചെയ്തു. ഹൗ ദേ ഫെൽറ്റ് ഫസ്റ്റ്ലി അവർ വന്ന ടൈമിൽ. സോ സെഡ് വി വെർ കിൻ ടു വൺ അനദർ because the British people, especially the European people, the settlers, in firstly they need to maintain a healthy relationship with the indigenous people, but thus with a guile. Guile mean a kind of a sly cunning intelligence, that means kaushalathodu kodittu. Thus with guile for a short while became to me a brother. Then you swarmed my way of gladness. Swarmed എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ അങ്ങനെ ചതുപ്പാക്കി കളയുക അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ പറയും. സ്വാംഡ്, അടിച്ചമർത്തുക. എനിവേ ദാറ്റ് ഐ എം give you the meaning of the word. Then you swarmed my way of gladness, took my children from my side. That is the guile, that is a cunning. That is, as he was acted as a brother, then he revealed what settlers really are. And then you swarmed my way of gladness, took my children from my side, snapped shut the law book. Oh my sadness, at Irakala's plea denied. അപ്പോൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും പ്രോബ്ലം ഉണ്ടാകുമ്പോൾ ഗവൺമെൻറ്റും ആരാണ്? നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു എപ്പിസ്റ്റമോളജിക്കൽ ഇൻവേഷൻ, പൊളിറ്റിക്കൽ ഇൻവേഷൻ ത്രൂ ഗവൺമെൻറ്റ്സ്, എസ്റ്റാബ്ലിഷിംഗ് ദ ഗവൺമെൻറ്റ്സ്. അപ്പോൾ അവരാണ് അവരുടെ ഒഫീഷ്യൽ ഇതിലൊക്കെ ഉള്ളത്. അപ്പോൾ ഇൻഡിജിനിയസ് പീപ്പിൾ വെന്നെവർ ദേ അപ്ലൈ ദ പ്ലീസ് ഓർ ഉള്ള ഉത്തരവുകളൊക്കെ അവർ പ്ലീയൊക്കെ അവർ എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്ന സമയത്ത്, സമർപ്പിക്കുന്ന ടൈമിലൊക്കെ ദി ഡിനൈ. Okay, what is Iraqala petition? You know, in 1963, the settlers, the government of the settlers, the Australian government decided to acquire the land. That means that അവരുടെ കയ്യിൽ നിന്ന് ഏകദേശം 300 സ്ക്വയർ കിലോമീറ്റർ ലാൻഡ് ഗവൺമെന്റ് വളരെ നിർബന്ധപൂർവ്വം അവരുടെ കയ്യിൽ നിന്ന് പിടിച്ചെടുക്കണ്ടായി. അതിന്റെ ലാൻഡ്, ആ ലാൻഡ് തിരിച്ചു കിട്ടുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടി ഇറാഖല പീപ്പിൾ ടു പ്ലീസ് വെർ filed inside of the court. But that made history, and you know there are a lot of historical incident took place following that bark petition. But that petitions didn't help them. That means that the bureaucracy and the government and the judicial system was also, that is why the poet said that the law book snapped the law book. നിയമപുസ്തകങ്ങൾ വരെ അവരുടെ മുമ്പിൽ അടഞ്ഞുപോയി. So the judicial system was also not ready to hear the feeble voices of the indigenous people. So this is Iraq, and there are so many historical references and coming to the line. And okay, then I cry again for Warara men gone from kith and kind, and I wondered when I would find a pen to probe your freckled mind. Freckled mind എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ഫ്രെക്കിൾഡ് എന്ന വാക്കിൻ്റെ അർത്ഥം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ പുള്ളികളുള്ള ഈ ബ്രിട്ടീഷുകാർ യൂറോപ്യൻസിൻ്റെ ഒക്കെ മുഖത്ത് വെയിൽ വൈറ്റമിൻ ഡി കൊണ്ടുപോകുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ. ഫ്രെക്കിൾഡ് മൈൻഡ്, ദാറ്റ് മീൻസ് ദാറ്റ് ആ വടുക്കളുള്ള മനസ്സിനെ കൂടിയാണ് അതിനെ എന്ത് ചെയ്യുന്നത്, നമ്മളെ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നത്. ടു പ്രോബ് യുവർ ഫ്രെക്കിൾഡ് മൈൻഡ് I mourned again for the Murray tribe. It is another tribe gone to without a trace. The number of tribes that we have discussed. I mourned again for the Murray tribe gone to without a trace. ഒരടയാളം പോലും വാട്ടി വെക്കാതെ. I thought of the soldiers' diatribe. Diatribe means that അവരുടെ ഈ പോലീസ് പരിഹാസം എന്നൊക്കെ പറയാൻ പറ്റുന്നുണ്ടോ. ഡയട്രൈബ് കുത്തുവ, ഈ അശ്ലീലപരമായിട്ടുള്ള പ്രയോഗങ്ങൾ സീവിയർ ക്രിറ്റിസിസത്തിന്റെ ഭാഗമായിട്ട് ചെയ്യുന്നതാണ്. I thought of the soldiers' diatribe. The smile on the governor's face, the attitude of the government towards the indigenous people. You murdered me. The poet was angry, and the poet was trying to display the hardship and his a kind of pain. He was trying to express those ideas through the poetry by saying that you murdered me with rope, with gun, the massacre of my enclave. You buried me deep on McClarty's Run. You know McClarty's Run. You murdered me with rope, with gun, the massacre of my enclave. You buried me deep on McClarty's Run. McClarty's Run is also another reference to another massacre done by the European settlers. What they did, even though the indigenous people were running back from the battlefield, they were fleeing out from the battlefield. They were trying to escape. The British people opened a fire, and many people were killed. And the number of people were killed in that terrible incident. So that happened to them. You probed me with the Christ. You buried me deep on McClarty's Run, flung into a common grave. Flung into a common grave. You propped me up with Christ, red tape, tobacco, grog and fears. You propped me with Christ, and they changed the religion. Red tape, that is a reference to a kind of the bureaucracy, and tobacco, grog and fears, such kinds of they imported into the land. Then disease and lordly rape, such kinds of things. Then diseases എന്തൊക്കെയാണ് അവരുടെ കൂടെ കൊണ്ടുവന്നത് എന്നുള്ളതാണ് പറയുന്നത്. tobacco, grog and fears, then disease and lordly rape. Then disease and lordly rape through the brutish years. Now you primly say you justified, and sing of a nation's glory. But I think of people crucified, the real Australian story. The poet here severely criticizing the mentality and the constructed history of the Australian constructed by the government, the empire government. And you are singing of a nation's glory, but I am not ready to accept that is a glory. It is a story of kidnapping, story of violence, story of oppression, the story of brutalities and cruelties, such kinds of things. And I think as a poet and as a social activist, and I am an Aborginal, that is why I think not the glory of your modern nation's constructed lies, but I think of people crucified, sacrificed their life. They have given their life to have their own identity in their own land. That is the real Australian story. Okay, let's conclude the important points and the poem. We know Jack Davis. He was a Australian playwright and poet and social activist. At the age of 83 in 2000, he died following a life devoted to improve the life of Aboriginal Australian. And he chose his voice of protest through plays like No Sugar and dreamers, etc. He was a social activist, tried to uplift the quality of the life of Aboriginals. Like UN, he filed a petition of protest against Australian government by accusing that the Australian government systematically exterminating the Aborigines. So he asked millions of dollars as a compensation for Aboriginal Australian land. He begged the international attention by inviting the attention of the world to the Aboriginal life. And Jack got many awards, and his poetry mainly exploring the past and present of the new younger people of Southwest Australia. And we know the poem Aboriginal Australia, or the Australian Aborigine, was written by Jack Davis. This poem is about the indigenous interaction with the European Australians, how European influences upon the Aboriginal life, how they changed through the violence and suppression and oppression. And he was trying to say that the Australian constructor story is a lie. It is a big lie. Really, the modern Australia was founded on the blood of many ancestors and the many innocent life of Aborigines. And he was discussing about the violence and a sense of mutual disrespect that last around 200 years. And he invited our attention to the multiple historical references like the Rakala Bark petition and the lake, the fresh St. Georgia freshwater lake, and Maklatisran and through Massacre and Warren people. And he says that the foundation of the modern Australia is not it is a bloody foundation. It is a bloody foundation that the many lives are completely wiped out because of the colonization that took place in Australia. Okay, so study well and write down your notes and do your research, and you have to read the poem by yourself. Then you can extract the so many points by yourselves. Thank you.